Because Iowa State looked so terrible against Cincinnati, and they did look terrible, many people are looking over the fact that Iowa State's offense is lethal, and they absolutely have to lean on it if they want to win games the rest of this season.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Marvitz. Thank you so much for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are talking about predominantly Iowa State offense. We're going to talk about the slight shift in what we saw against Cincinnati for Iowa State and what that looks like potentially moving forward for Iowa State. And then we're going to shift into a little bit of philosophy and talk about maybe a different strategy for Iowa State moving forward in the second segment. And finally, we're going to take a look at the rest of the season outlook, just at a bird's eye view as Iowa State took on their first loss. Can't wait to dive into all that and more. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, so Iowa State did not look good against Cincinnati. They just didn't. And, you know, a lot of that falls on the defense, but there were certainly times where the offense didn't look great either. We'll get into strategy more so in the second segment, but for now, let's focus on more so where the ball went, right? Not play calling or when are you going for it or what are you doing in this situation? What has happened for Iowa State this season? Okay, Iowa State 5-1 through the first 5 games, undefeated. And I think the story of this team through those 5 games was the dominance of the tight end. Okay, obviously against Kansas State to kick off the season, starting the season, I suppose 24-21 overseas. You know, in Dublin, the leading receiver was Brett Eskilsson, but then it was Brahmer and Burkle right behind him. With a 41 and a 31-yard day for Brahmer and Burkle. Then we move on to South Dakota. And look, the South Dakota game and the Arkansas State game, I'm not going to put a lot of merit into or whatever, but it's worth bringing them up. Against South Dakota, Burkle was your leading wide receiver, and then Eskilsson, and then Brahmer. So same 3 guys, slightly different order, tight end, wide receiver, tight end. Burkle had 85 and Brahmer had 47. Against Iowa, very interesting game here. Very interesting first 4 games for Iowa State, just when you look at it. Obviously, I had a very much mentality of like, look, we just got to win the games in front of us. But when you're looking at Iowa State from like a resume perspective, it's very odd where you've got, you know, the tail end of a 4-game stretch. You've got South Dakota in there, and you've got an Iowa, which is a Cy-Hawk rivalry game. And it's hard for me to really put a ton of like looking at the offense in a completely, you know, third person view or whatever, a non-biased view. Either way, receiving against Iowa, it was those 3 guys. It was Eskilsson, Burkle, and Brahmer with 39, 33, and 18. Like I said, though, this is the Cy-Hawk game, and it's hard to really I personally, for me, I say the Cy-Hawk game is always super tight. I don't feel like it should be judged the same as all the rest of the games on Iowa State's schedule. That's what I was trying to say. But to my point, still the same 3 guys at the top of that box score. Against Arkansas State, Iowa State threw, and things looked a little bit different, but not too far off. You had Townsend, Moore, and Carson Brown were your top 3 in there. Cooper Alexander made his way on there, and Brahmer did at the very bottom. Had 1 reception for 3 yards, was our lowest reception or lowest receiver in that game. Townsend obviously had a massive game, final catch on that last drive or whatever it was, right around the end of the game, 44-yarder, awesome. And Tyler Moore was kind of the tight end that showed up in that one for us. And Carson Brown had some final words in that one as well, 2 receptions for 37 yards. I'm going to keep it moving here, but you get what I'm saying. Against Arizona, the receivers was where the big shift, I think, was. You got Sowell, Eskilsson, and Hansen. Here's your top 3. Brahmer and Burkle were 4 and 5. I feel like that's a lot more common. And then against Cincinnati, right? This is where I think we saw a pretty major shift, especially when you just look at reception numbers, and we'll get into that in a second. But Brett Eskilsson, Chase Sowell, Xavier Townsend are your 1, 2, 3. 105, 58, 50 yards respectively. Then you've got Brahmer, and then Overby sneaks in, and then Burkle. Okay. Now, Brahmer did have 48 yards, so realistically, he's 2 yards away from making the top 3. But what I'm saying here is I feel like there is a noticeable shift towards the wide receivers in this Cincinnati game. When you look at the Arizona game, now Iowa State did put up 39 points in this one, so we're not really going to have a points argument here. But it was 4 receptions to Sowell for 146 yards. He just torched them. He just blew them up, which is kind of what we thought might happen. Brett Eskelson had 3 receptions for 54, and then Carson Hansen had 3 for 31. Burkle and Brahmer both had 2 receptions, and it really just kind of was how the chips fell for those 2 guys at 29 and 19 yards. Cincinnati, it's a noticeable difference. 8 receptions for Eskelson, 5 for Sowell, 6 for Townsend, and then Brahmer at 3 and Burkle at 2. That is a large gap in the number of receptions, right? Number of targets. And the yards kind of come with that. So I'm not really looking at yards necessarily. I'm more so looking at receptions. That's where I see the shift for this Iowa State offense. Now, is that the right identity for Iowa State to take moving forward? And you'll see why we talk so much about this Iowa State offense, why I'm setting it up on the tee this way when I get into this in the second segment. So don't go anywhere. But is this the right play for Iowa State to really go into these wide receivers, to put the game in their hands? You know, to answer that question, I think probably not. But at the exact same time, absolutely, which I understand is terrible. But look at it this way, okay? Iowa State's identity up until this point in the season against Cincinnati was to basically run through the tight ends, run the passing game through the tight ends, and if Eskelson gets open deep, he does. That's awesome. And he did that consistently, especially early on this season. We all thought this was going to be Sowell and Townsend's receiving core, right? We thought it was going to be those guys. We heard a lot about Eskelson. I was banging the Eli Green drum. Like, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but we all thought it would be Sowell and Townsend. And then everyone, I think, at least we were talking about it here like crazy, but I feel like everyone was pretty keyed in on the tight ends as well. I don't think anybody thought that they would be the way that this offense moved the ball through the air. I think that was an advantage for Iowa State. However, the reason I say it's also not that great is we just didn't see a ton of explosive plays from this Iowa State offense. And look, you don't need explosive plays to win games, but it's very nice to have. So I think the best of both worlds would be that Iowa State can work through their tight ends as they did through the first 5 games of the season, and really put together drives, and then they can have that explosive ability on the outside. Now, there's 2 caveats to that. One, the wide receivers on the outside, me being, a former quote-unquote wide receiver, and just from what I've heard from top-tier players in college and the NFL, it's really tough to not really get targets, to not really get the ball, and then all of a sudden in the third quarter when you need a 30-yard chunk play just to turn it on. That's a very tough thing to do. It's mentally, it's challenging. I don't know what it is. For me, it was, and obviously for these guys at a much higher level, it is as well. So that has to be taken into account here. It's like when Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, any of these top-end wide receivers, if they're not really going by halftime or the end of the first quarter, if they haven't gotten a few targets, they're already talking about it on the broadcast. Obviously for the reason that they play a major role in that offense, but also like you get the gears kind of lubed up, and then they're better throughout the course of the rest of this game. The other piece of this being that the tight ends, the way that they're used is very, very interesting. It does kind of extend the run game in some ways, and it expands the playbook, I feel like, in a good way for Iowa State, but it makes them slightly one-dimensional if you were to just focus in on basically making it a tight end-based receiving core with wide receivers out wide. You wouldn't necessarily want that. So I can see both sides to the coin. Me personally, I kind of want him to lean more back into that tight end receiving option they just have weapons outside. We know that they're capable. Eskelson, Sowell, Townsend for sure are capable outside, but it felt like we got away from that a little bit just the identity of this Iowa State offense. It felt like we got a little bit off base, just far enough to get tagged, just far enough to get picked off. Not literally in the football sense. I'm trying to make a baseball analogy here, and you can clearly tell how much I don't watch baseball. So we're going to go ahead and move on and talk about Iowa State's strategy here in just 1 second. This episode today is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. And my favorite part personally is that Prize Picks just added stacks. So if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So Iowa State's offense predominantly went through the tight ends, right? Now we saw the evolution, I feel like, of the wide receiver against Cincinnati, but they came up short. Why? Well, we're going to break it down here today on Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I don't have an exact answer for you. I think that it gave the offense a different feel, a different vibe. Something was off. Now, granted, I understand that you can't just put that in a vacuum. Like, I get it. I 100% I do. I'm doing my best to try to break this down in a way that makes sense or that can even be digested. But if we zoom out and take a look at this offense as a whole, I genuinely think that Iowa State's offense is like in the elite category. Now, it's not like knocking down doors. Welcome in to Iowa State offense, ladies and gentlemen. Get your hats on, your hard hats on, because it's going to be a show. Like, it's not anything crazy, but I think they're very, very good. Also, where did hard hats come from there? I don't know. Nonetheless, I think that this team needs to lean on the offense moving forward. They absolutely have to. Against Cincinnati, right, it was very much a tale of two halves for the defense. The first half, I saw a few guys comment like, wet tissue paper defense. That's what it was. It was egregious. It was, to be quite frank, disgusting. It was unacceptable. And I don't like throwing the word unacceptable around. Like, I just don't like that word. But that's how I felt about that defense in the first half. Second half, very good. I think across the board, Iowa State's offense was relatively, quote unquote, ish even. Now, you can get down to the nitty gritty and nitpick everything. But, 15 points in the first, 15 points in the second half. I feel like, it was pretty much there. And honestly, I thought they left a lot more out there. I thought they left a lot to be desired. So I went back and took a look at, Iowa State's points this season and whatever, and some of these statistics. And Iowa State is scoring 33.3 points per game so far this season. Right now, you're obviously only through 6 games, 5-1. But compared to last year's team only put up 31.9 points per game. And I don't think anybody was saying that offense was like unstoppable, but I think a lot of people were saying that about the wide receivers. And so there is an element to me that this offense is like, it's arguably just as good, if not better, than last season's. And so what I want to get at here is we can lean on this offense and just effectively, basically, I don't think this will happen because no one's going to show this clip to Matt Campbell, and no one's going to – this clip isn't going to change Matt Campbell's mind, right? Matt Campbell's going to play his style of football, but I wouldn't be either opposed or shocked or whatever term you want to use if Iowa State started just trying to outscore teams. Like, it feels like Iowa State's okay with keeping it close, low scoring battle, this, that, the other, play the field position game a little bit. I wouldn't be opposed if they just go like full Detroit Lions type offense. We're going to score as many points as we possibly can. And I'm not saying that Detroit is maybe the best example for that, but in the past few years under Campbell, it might be. I wouldn't hate that. I don't think that that is a bad play for Iowa State because, look, I'm not saying that the defense isn't going to be there the rest of the season. I think they played really well in the second half, but I don't know if we can count on them to hold opponents to 14 points a game right now. I think it's going to take a while to figure out what this secondary is made of. Are the linebackers going to play better than they did in the first half against Cincinnati? Boy, I sure hope so. I really hope so. I also think that there is a very valid argument for Iowa State to effectively play the field position game the rest of the season, but I don't find myself in that camp. I think that argument is valid. I see everyone that feels that way. Me personally, just as an Iowa State fan, I don't think that that is the best play for this Iowa State team. I think they need to go out, be aggressive, take on that as an identity. The reason I bring up the Detroit Lions, which I know they're not perfect, but the reason I bring them up is it feels like, or even the Eagles, right? When it's like 4th and 2, 4th and 3, and they're not on their own 5-yard line, they're going to go for it. The Eagles, if it's 4th and 1, or if it's 3rd and 3, you know they're just going to run it to the 1-yard line, or 4th and 1, and then they're going to tush push. Like, that's what they do. There is a mindset shift for those teams, so it's not shocking or jarring or nerve-wracking on 4th down. I'm not saying Iowa State needs to go for it on 4th and 8 on their own 18-yard line, but I am saying if we're going to adopt this offensive air raid, high scoring, high risk identity, I'm not opposed to it. And I think that identity shift, that adoption of that mentality is good for that offense then, where you find yourself in 4th and 6. Well, we know what plays we've got dialed up for 4th and 6. If you're not going to kick it on your own 19-yard line or whatever it was for Iowa State, when you're down 9, and I laid out yesterday exactly why they needed to kick that ball. If you're not going to kick it there, now that's your identity, in my opinion. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But that's just, it can't be half in, half out, in my opinion. You can't run that identity and be like, yep, okay, situational, we're going for it. Yep, stats say go. Getting it in from my headset up top. Yep, Mauser, what are you saying? Yep. All right, 4th and 3 or less. What is it, 4th and 2? All right, yep, we're good to go. Green light. All right, Rocco, you know the call. Like, no. It's like, if we are not on our half of the field, we're going for it. And if we are on our half of the field, if we're within 5 yards, we're going for it. Like, that's the type of mentality. You now go in to every set of downs with 4 opportunities. You don't go in with 3. You know how demoralizing it is when you've given up multiple 4th down first downs as a defense? Like, that kills you. That kills you. And if that's the identity that Iowa State offense wants to take, I think they could do it. Now, to loop this whole kind of basically first 2 segments together, I think the tight ends can be a major part of that. You don't need to get downfield, 8, 9 yards on first down. You don't need to get yourself behind the sticks with some crazy long developing play that ends up in a sack. You don't need to do anything wild here. Just pick up a few yards, run the ball. We've been running the ball well. Run the ball, pick up a few yards with your tight ends. You have options for a deep shot if it presents itself, if you like the matchup, if you like the coverage, whatever. You see a blitz, this, that, the other. Obviously, Rocco's a very good quarterback, able to make those reads. You just chug your way down the field. First and 10 moves to 2nd and 8. Okay, we're moving ahead. Moves to 3rd and 5. All right. Moves to 4th and 2. All right. Moves to 1st and 10. It was a 4-yard pickup. Moves to 2nd and 9. Oh, a little bit longer. Then you just pick up half of it. Or even if you don't, if it's an incomplete pass, right? 3rd and 9, pick up half of it. We're good to go. I think that mentality shift could be very good for Iowa State. I do. Now, I'm probably going to be called crazy for that. And let me hear it in the comments. And let me hear it on Twitter at Nick_Marv. I also have Instagram and stuff too, but you have to find me on those. I think I think this offense is the strong suit of Iowa State. I really do. The defense is good, but right now, if I had to put all my eggs in one basket, it would be the offense 10 times out of 10. It just would. However, you got to play on both sides of the ball to win games. Can Iowa State do that the rest of the season? Let's take a look at their schedule and where the rest of the Big 12 falls on the final segment of today's show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, and college football is back. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. My personal favorite feature by a mile is the ability to see the exact view from my seat before buying. I will bang that drum until the timpani breaks. I mean, that is by far the best feature. But the zone deals are amazing too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. You've heard me talk about Cafe Diem here before. I'm going to do it again because I loved going to Cafe Diem during my time in Ames. Feels like I need to get back there and get back to Cafe Diem. I love the vibe, the ability to go in there and study. It's unlike anything else in Ames, to be completely honest. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world, and you can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. So Iowa State losing to Cincinnati was not a fun experience for me at all. I don't know how you felt about it. But boy, I did not enjoy that even one little bit. So it did feel like everything was kind of coming down. The season was over, but now, we've reached a point. We are far enough removed where I can think with a bit of a straight, I can keep my head on, right? And so I don't think Iowa State's season is over. I think that there is a world where they can get back to the Big 12 title game, but I think they need to play really well. And I don't think that that's unfair to the team, unfair, based on what I've said the rest of the, prior to this point in the season. Also, when you consider what they're facing injury-wise. Let's take a look at the rest of Iowa State's season. I'm sure you know it by heart by now. I know I do. But we'll take a closer look at the teams that they face and the teams at the top of the conference as well. So Iowa State, obviously, coming off the loss to Cincinnati, they're in the middle of this 3-game stretch before they have another bye, or I guess kind of on the second half of this. They'll play Colorado on the road in Colorado, and then they'll have a bye. Now, Colorado has not looked great this season. I think this is a very gettable game for Iowa State, and we're going to talk about this for the next few days this week. So I'm not going to dive too far into that one. It's going to be a fun game to break down. Hopefully, maybe we'll talk with Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs and just kind of see what his thoughts are, because Colorado is not the same team it was last year. Just to sum up the summary, summarizing a preview is probably a better way to put that, of the Colorado matchup. Then a bye week. Hopefully Iowa State can get kind of healthy to the best of their ability during that. Then we've got really a pretty tough 3-game stretch and a bye, and I would say pretty tough game coming off the bye, and then Oklahoma State. So the middle 3 games that I was talking about that are difficult for Iowa State are BYU, Arizona State, and TCU. Now, you do get BYU and Arizona State at home, but TCU, you have to go down to Dallas-Fort Worth. BYU, to me, is unproven right now. They're 5-0. That's good for them. But I just haven't seen, they just haven't really played anybody yet. So, they play West Virginia, but, West Virginia right now is, not very good. So, no hate to West Virginia, just not playing the best ball that they have ever. So, I'd like to see more out of BYU before I really step in and say, oh, yeah, Iowa State's, in this position against BYU. I think that's a gettable game right now. Where things stand at this moment in time, I feel okay about Iowa State getting that game. Arizona State, okay, here's the deal with Arizona State. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Going into the season, I was like, yeah, Arizona State could be a very tough game. Then, really after the first couple of weeks, I was like, you know what? Arizona might not be good. Arizona might actually just be like totally overhyped from last season. Talk about how many guys are coming back. Obviously, Sam Leavitt, Tyson, like this team, maybe just we thought about them in a different way than we should and than what actually is appearing on the field. And now I'm back to the camp of like, okay, Arizona State's pretty good. Not going to say they're a world beater, but they are a very good team. We cannot sleep on them. That's going to be a challenge for Iowa State. I think that game right now, that game is the game I'm circling as, does this team have it? Right? Like, does this team have it this year, basically? Now, obviously, you've got 4 weeks between the end of the season and the Arizona State game to find out, will they fall off, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But that game, I think, is probably one of the toughest games left on Iowa State's schedule. BYU will probably be ranked. I think there's a very solid argument for TCU to be ranked, and Kansas is good as well. But Arizona State, at this moment in time, I do think is probably the toughest team left on Iowa State's schedule. TCU on the road. Now, TCU is also good. Not perfect, right? Arizona State got them, but very good. And I think Josh Hoover is going to be a problem. I think they could have won that game. I definitely think they could have beat Arizona State, but they didn't. And that's a part of kind of the evaluation there. That's going to be a tough game. That's not going to be one we can sleep on, but it's a winnable game. I do think they can get them. They'll be on the road. It'll be tough, but TCU, very interesting place. Been down there quite a few times. Very interesting place down there in Dallas-Fort Worth. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Kansas at home. That one is going to be another checkup for Iowa State. It'll really depend, I feel like, on what the roster looks like, what the record looks like, what are the vibes going into that game. But it is at home. Look, I think Kansas is a good team. They just haven't played maybe their best ball in the last few weeks. But don't sleep on Kansas either. So that's going to be a tough one. Then you got Oklahoma State on the road. And look, I don't think that's going to be too big of a problem. I'm not going to completely look over them. I almost said that sentence, completely looking over them. I'm not going to do that. They can beat anybody. It's the Big 12. But I don't think they're going to be as tough as Arizona State. Let's say it like that. So just looking at the rest of this schedule here, I think it's reasonable to assume that Iowa State loses one more game. Now, I hope they don't. And I think there is a world where they win out. But you need a lot of things to go your way if we're being realistic here. I think that if you lose one, let's say you lose to Arizona State, I don't think you can lose two. I don't think you can probably lose two. The way Texas Tech is playing right now, two more, right? So one more would be two total. I don't think they can lose two more. That would put them at 3 conference losses. And the way Texas Tech is playing right now, like, if you lose to Arizona State and BYU, both of those teams will have relatively, very good records and nothing too crazy the rest of the way. Obviously, BYU will play Texas Tech and TCU and Cincinnati, actually. So they might have it pretty tough. But Arizona State, looking at theirs, they'll have, after Iowa State, West Virginia, Colorado, Arizona. So like Arizona State after Iowa State, not facing a whole lot of competition. The other team we didn't talk about yet is Cincinnati. I do think Cincinnati is a relatively, I would say they're in contender status. They're probably up there. They looked really good against Iowa State, but also Iowa State looked terrible. So it's hard to like, I don't like saying that about Iowa State, but like it was ugly. It brought out a new level of anger when I was like, what are we? It doesn't even look like we're playing. And maybe I'm a terrible talent evaluator. Maybe I'm a terrible game tape evaluator. But, and look, if this is bulletin board material for Iowa State, good. Use it. Go play better. That's the way I look at it. But Cincinnati, can't ignore them either. Like, there are teams at the top of the Big 12 right now, even in the middle of the Big 12, like Kansas, or I don't know if I'd put Baylor in that conversation, but TCU, that are going to be gunning for that top spot. I don't think Iowa State can lose two more. So I can see a world where they only lose one. I can see a world where they lose to Arizona State. But if they only lose to Arizona State, is that enough? I think you need help to get to the Big 12 title game with a loss to only Arizona State, because then Arizona State obviously wins that game and the rest of their schedule isn't too insane. They do play Texas Tech. So who knows, the way that this could all shake out to be a very interesting end of the season. And obviously we are a few weeks away from even like the midpoint of the season. Like we've got a ways to go. It's not like we're there, right? We are not. Actually, it's about the midpoint of the season. No, I just zoomed out on the scale. I got a little bit too locked in. We're about at the midway. This is pretty awesome. This is gearing up. We're looking at something awesome here. Not midway through conference, just midway through the season. This is the way I'm looking at it. That being said, that's going to do it. I don't know. I think Iowa State can make it back to the Big 12 championship game. It's gonna take a lot, and a lot's gonna have to go their way, but I think they can. What do you think? Can they make it back? Are they able to? Do they have the offense to do it? Can the defense hold the remaining teams on their schedule to less points than what Iowa State can score? Essentially is what it comes down to. I think so, but I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comments below or at Nick_Marv on Twitter, also on Instagram, all over the place, you guys. Shout out to you guys for making it to this point in the episode. Be sure to hit subscribe down below. It's completely free. Helps us prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. That being said, until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.